I'm Pastor Henry Hildebrandt. A little update this morning on what is happening with the churches in Manitoba, Canada. I have received word that they have put a letter together. The churches have put a letter together that will be signed. Today is the last day for it to be signed, and then it's supposed to be sent to Premier Pallister tomorrow, I believe. I thought what I would do, normally I would not just read something to you, but this letter is extremely good, and just in case you don't have access to it or you don't know where to find it, I thought I would just quickly read this letter to you. It's actually not very long. Let me see if I can just get that to you here real quick. It says, "Dear Premier Pallister, thank you for your service as you seek to guide the province of Manitoba through COVID-19 pandemic during the past few months. As you are aware, churches have not been able to assemble freely since mid-March. We were told this was necessary to, quote, flatten the curve, to save thousands of lives and to prevent hospitals from being overwhelmed. The data is now out and the curve is flat. Active cases peaked months ago on April 4th. In Manitoba and indeed around the world, the models used to try to justify the lockdowns have proven inaccurate by the order of magnitudes. The infringements upon our constitutional freedoms is unjustified. Therefore, the limits to our guaranteed freedoms have not been demonstrably justified and must be immediately removed. Without demonstrable justification, limits to fundamental freedoms cannot be legally imposed. The free assembly of the church is not incidental to Christian worship, but it is an essential component of our worship. It is not the role of the state to determine that online resources substitute as a peaceful assembly. The church exists by the authority of Jesus Christ himself and not by the authority of the civil government. We are thankful to live in a country where the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the freedom of conscience and religion and the freedom of peaceful assembly to all Canadians. These freedoms are subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. The limits have not been demonstrably justified. Therefore, it is time that the government remove any and all limits placed against the fundamental freedoms of Canadians to practice their religion and to peacefully assemble in accordance with their own conscience. Churches can assume responsibility to protect their own congregants from the risk of COVID-19 in ways that are appropriate to the individual context. We will continue to pursue this matter persistently, whether through lobbying or legal action in court as necessary. By these means, we will recover the fundamental freedoms upon which Canada is built. We will continue to pray for you and all our leaders, and we look forward to your response." That is a beautiful letter written by the churches in Manitoba to the Premier of Manitoba. We truly hope that this will make a change. There's nothing like standing together, and like I said, they have, I believe there's 46 churches so far that have joined together, over 1,400 people that have signed the letter, and we're expecting that it will have a good result. Some have asked, why is it so important to you all that churches be open? What about all the businesses? Well, I should remind you that in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, I should remind you that the very first thing on there says, whereas Canada is founded upon the principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. And the very first thing on the Canadian Charter of Freedoms, of Rights and Freedoms, deals with the fundamental freedoms and lets us know that we have the God-given freedom of peaceful assembly. As the letter states, that it has been greatly exaggerated about COVID-19. We are not saying, I've said it in the past and I'll say it again, we're not saying that there isn't a flu going around, and perhaps quite a severe flu. But the whole thing has been exaggerated, has been politicized, and we as church people, as Christians, have basically taken the brunt of it, and we don't feel that it is right because of what the Bible says, and also because of what the freedoms, that the God-given freedoms that we are guaranteed in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We believe that we must labor to maintain those. Otherwise they will be taken from us, as they're already talking about. What if a second wave comes in later on in the fall? Then when will we finally get into our buildings? So this is where things are at this point. I wish you God's blessings and wish you a wonderful day.